Hello, everybody, and welcome. This is Hugh here at Loxone, and I'm here with another one of our focus webinars. In today's webinar, we are going to be looking at something rather cool. So we're going to be looking at virtual outputs. Virtual outputs from Loxone give you the ability to send things out from the mini server to an external system. So with virtual outputs, many of you will have probably already used them for things like IP control of TVs, of projectors, of various other networking devices, HD matrices, etc., etc. Very, very commonly used for them. Virtual outputs trigger HTTP commands that turn something on or switches a source on something. But we're going to be looking at virtual outputs for something a little bit different, because using virtual outputs, we can actually make very, very clever things happen. We can make really, really powerful stuff happen. And so we've got a little scenario to walk you through, which is billing using an NFC code touch and NFC fobs. So in a lot of larger commercial properties, it's quite common that you will have a cafeteria area with hot food and various drinks available, but it comes out of your wages. It's in fact how our headquarters over in Austria work, our base camp. When you get your food or you get your tea, your coffee, there is an NFC code touch. You press a certain function, press the tick, and then you present your NFC fob to it. And what we want to be able to do is we want to be able to take that data from the Loxone system and automatically send it somewhere else to be of use. And this is what we're going to look at in today's webinar. So as you'll also see behind me, I've also prepared one of our training walls, which has an NFC code touch on it, so that I can actually show you this happening in the real world. Now what I have is I've got a config file here that I have already I've already paired in my NFC code touch, and I've already assigned 3 fobs to 3 users. So I've already created 3 different users here and assigned each one of them a fob. What I've then also done, and this is where something a little bit magical happens, I've just, for showing you this, made my laptop a HTTP server. So my laptop has Apache running just so I can run a website from my laptop locally to show you this. And then what I've got is I've created a few PHP scripts. So for anyone that doesn't know, PHP is part of what's used on websites in HTML coding, various things. One of the most common uses of PHP is for forms. So anytime you go to a website and it says fill in your name, your email address, your date of birth, and press submit, that's actually sending a PHP form. Now, wouldn't it be cool if Loxone could also, the mini server, could also pretend that it was filling in a form? And so that's what I've done. I've written a couple of PHP scripts, which are basically looking for an incoming form data with a variable of user. So if they get data with a variable of user, these forms are set to write particular files based on it. So I've got 2 forms. One form writes to a PHP script that can be pulled up in a website. The other form writes to a CSV file for something like billing software. Now, of course, I can't teach you how to write PHP scripts. You really need to do a few web development courses if you want to learn these kind of things. But never fear, if you do have particular projects where these things should be implemented, please give us a call. While we can't help you write the scripts, what we can do is we do know partners in the UK who are more than capable of helping you out with this kind of stuff. So feel free to get in touch with those things anyway. But so this is what I've got. I've got 2 forms in PHP ready to go, which I can send data to. Then on the third side, I've got just a bog standard page ready, just a web page that is set to pull in the data from one of those PHP scripts. So I've got a PHP file called entries, and this web page here pulls in that script. And so the principle here is when somebody presses their fob to the NFC code touch, it should write 2 files. One file is going to be a CSV file that can get automatically imported into the billing software. Whichever billing profile you use, they all accept CSV files. and the other file that gets written is going to be automatically pulled into this web page. The reason why is if you can just about make out those background images, there's our base camp, all lovely and pretty. And the second image is actually where we run this in the real life. And that over there is a tablet that has a web page running that shows what everyone's purchased, so that everyone has a running tally of what they've bought that day. And so that could be the use of the web page. Now, quickly, before I go into showing you how I'm actually going to do this, if any of you are thinking, oh, okay, well, that's really, really cool for billing on an NFC code touch, but I may never do a project like that. Think of the possibilities of being able to use virtual outputs in this way. Think of, let's say, a commercial building that had access control in and out that they maybe wanted to do timekeeping for. You could do the same kind of scenario for that. It could write a CSV file on the way in, and then it could amend the CSV file to remove a record on the NFC code touch out. And that could then be timekeeping done. You could also, if you integrate the fire alarm into Loxone, then if the fire alarm goes off, it could trigger a script to print that CSV file off. So you could have fire roll call as well. So by being able to do things like this, we really take Loxone, and anything that we don't natively do in Loxone yet, you can still achieve. And so let's get on to the config. So what we have here is just a bog standard NFC code touch. As I said, I've paired in 3 tags for 3 users. And on my NFC code touch, I've created 4 outputs. Output number 1 is beer, because of course, like any self-respecting Austrian company, beer is available in the cafe when we go for our lunch. Output 2 is coffee, output 3 is tea, and output 4 is crisps. And so what I need to do is, if somebody presents a fob, I need to recognize it, and I need to recognize it along with what they've purchased. And so I can use a block like a status block to do this. And so what I can do is I could take the QA output, which is a pulse when permission is granted, into AI1. I could then also take the TQ output, which is a text output which provides the last authorization details. And I could put TQ into AI2. I'm actually going to swap these around. So I'm going to put TQ into AI1 and I'm going to put QA into AI2, just because then I don't have lines overlapping, because I'm really pedantic like that. So now I have a pulse when somebody's presented a valid fob, and the text to say who they are, what the time was, and what output they've used. Now, in my status block, I need to say that if a pulse is recognized, so if AI2 equals 1, then I want to output some text. And I want to just straight up output whatever is on AI2. So whatever is on AI2, I just want to send straight out on the text output of the status block. And the next bit that comes in is my virtual outputs. So what I've done is I've created a virtual output called web page. And on this output over here in the address bar, I've put the address of my website. So this is just the address of the web page. Now, if you're writing to a third-party server, it may be password protected, so you could add the username and password to this string as well. I've made mine not password protected, again, just to simplify this. So that there is just the link to my local Apache server that's running. Then under the virtual output, I've created 2 virtual output commands for the 2 PHP forms I've got. The one for the CSV is going to amend the IP address with /csvform.php, which is the name of my form. And then these forms are set up to accept a get command. And so the way that you send a get command, a get request over a PHP form, is you amend the end of the form with a question mark. You then put the name of your variable, which I said was user, equals, and then the data that you want to send to the form. And so that's what I've done. I've put /csvform.php question mark, user equals, and brackets v means it passes on the data from whatever this output is going to be connected to. And so that's my CSV form. And I can connect that straight to my TQ output. And then my next one is the form that's going to write for my web page. So this one is /form.php user equals brackets v. But this time I've done brackets br at the end of it as well. And the reason for that is that in HTML language, br means line break. So it's going to put a line break between each output that I send rather than having them all on one single line. And so those are my two virtual output templates. Both of them just need to go straight there. Another thing to bear in mind, and this got me when I was testing it out and I was wondering why it wasn't working. When you create a virtual output command, by default, it will be a digital output. Now, of course, I want to send a text value, so I need to untick that on both of these. Once I've done that, I save in. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to this web page I've got here. And when that's saved in, I'm going to take one of my fobs. I am then going to take that fob and I'm going to present it against the NFC Code Touch. And then I'm going to wait for this page to refresh in about 3 seconds. There we go. And as you can see, data has come through. It's not exactly the correct data I wanted to see, so I'm probably going to need to look at why. So I'm sending through, that's why. It's because being the plonker that I am, I'm sending through the pulse text rather than the text of my text output. So I needed to do V1. That's me switching the outputs around at the last second on myself. So now that I've done that and saved that in, I should now actually get some usable data through. So I'll give that another second to save in. Same fob, present it to the NFC Code Touch. Wait a few seconds for the web page to refresh. Look at that. 2020-04-03 at 15:15, output beer, user Hugh Ewen. So I've just bought beer, standard. If I press 2 tick and then fob, again, then wait for this page to refresh. There we go. This time I've got coffee. If I take another one, present that. Again, let the page refresh. There we go. Now Philip has just bought beer instead. And then Tim, he's going to go for output number 4 and present his fob. And again, we're just going to let the page refresh. I think I set it to 10 seconds auto refresh. There we go. Output crisps, user Tyrone Cosway. And that is how we can use virtual outputs much more powerfully than just control an AV receiver to turn on and off. Imagine if we were writing this data to an SQL database, so a proper database structure somewhere. The amount of things that we could do with this would be endless. We could have multiple sites for different offices for an international company all over the world, all writing their tea and coffee usage into a centralized database so that a single admin or purchasing department somewhere can sort out everyone's billing in all one go. We could even do printers so that you could only print when you've presented a fob, and it takes 5p off for things like college scenarios. As I said, fire alarm roll call as well. Immensely powerful opportunities here. If I go to the folder where these documents are stored, you'll also see here is my CSV file, and look, there are my various logs on the CSV as well. So as most accounting software will support CSV right from the get-go, and you can just import that straight in and it would automatically do the rest for you. And so just as a recap, NFC Code Touch, different outputs for the different things I'm buying, fobs learnt into users, and then a status block. And if a granted access pulse happens, then the status block passes through the text output of the NFC Code Touch, and then I've got 2 virtual output commands. The main virtual output is the website address of where my PHP forms are stored, and the second are my PHP forms themselves, and then they're set to, if I just double click on one of these, so that'll show you the full command for on. There we go. So you see on this one, that's the form, and then question mark onwards is the data I'm sending to it. So in my form, I'm looking for the variable of user. And then if it recognizes user, it sends in the value from the TQ output. So brackets v just means it passes anything straight on. And then it adds a line break at the end of it so that I get it on my web page nicely formatted. I personally, it is so powerful and endless the things that you can do with it. I really hope you've enjoyed this, guys. Please feel free to join me again next time. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.